to another episode of Always Up to Date. Today we're going to be talking about what the duties of a bookkeeper are. So again, my name is Denise and I am a co-owner of Always Bookkeeping.
And my name is Yahweh, I'm also a co-owner of Always Bookkeeping.
Yeah, so if you've seen our videos before, you know that we normally start out with a quote and a statistic. So our quote today is from Red Adair, who specialized in extinguishing and capping oil well fires. So the quote is, "If you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do the job, wait until you hire an amateur." And the statistic that we have is from Intuit, which is the makers of QuickBooks. So only 11% of business owners seek professional help. So Yahweh, you have a bit of a story from our experience that you can share.
Yeah, so again, this is very common with our industry where a small business owner would hire a bookkeeper who doesn't have an accounting background. They might just know how to use software, or maybe they've worked at a bookkeeping firm before and have some ideas on how to do the bookkeeping. Mm-hmm. Normally, the horror story would be the chart of account would be a mess because they don't have the accounting background, so they don't necessarily know where the accounts should be and should be reported, or classify the accounts, and then your transactions will not be recorded properly, and your accountant had to redo most of the bookkeeping that happened. So you end up paying a lot of expenses for your accountant, which would have been avoided if you had a more qualified bookkeeper, right?
Yeah. Good. So Yahweh, I just have a few questions that you might want to ask about what the duties of a bookkeeper are. So first, who can become a bookkeeper?
So bookkeepers don't have a governing body. I think we talked about it in a previous video. We are not very highly regulated. So what happens is that anyone who can work on a software or is very tech savvy can really become a bookkeeper just by having that knowledge in the back of their head. But bookkeeping is for us to help the small business owners make decisions based on the report. So the necessity to have a more qualified bookkeeper is very high and very important for a small business owner.
Yeah, I think we've talked in one of our other videos how important it is to have your bookkeeping in order and organized so that you can make those day-to-day decisions that you need to make, so that, you know, at the year end, when you take your stuff to your accountant, you're not surprised that you have no money because you made all these purchases that you really couldn't afford. So yeah, I agree. It's very important to have a bookkeeper that really knows what they're doing. And I think the accountant really appreciates that too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Yahweh, what's accrual accounting?
So accrual accounting, the easiest way to explain it is through example for revenue and expenses. If there's a difference between the time that you performed a service or incurred an expense and the time that you received the money or you paid the money. So it's very different from a cash basis perspective, where you only record the expense or the revenue when you receive the cash. So there's a lot of error that might happen due to the fact that there is a difference between the record date and the receipt date.
Yeah, and that's mostly what we use, right? Is accrual accounting. It seems to be the norm to do that. So Yahweh, what are accounts receivable and accounts payable?
So accounts receivable and accounts payable, these are very helpful accounts to see what are outstanding. So accounts receivable, these are the revenue that you've already recognized, or let's say the services that you performed and products that you've had provided that you haven't necessarily received the payment for. So your accounts receivable would really show you who owes you money. And accounts payable is the other way around, where you are the ones who incurred the expenses but not necessarily have paid for the services or the products. So accounts payable would show you anyone who you owe money to. Yeah.
Okay. And what is a bank reconciliation?
A bank reconciliation, we'll have another video that would kind of explain a little bit more details on this. But basically what it is you're trying to match the transactions that happened on your end versus the transactions that your bank actually was able to gather. So bank reconciliation is a good practice to see what your bank already expected to show versus what you're expecting. So most of the time you'll have transactions that won't necessarily show to your bank account yet, and it's necessary to do bank reconciliation on periodically, just to make sure that you have enough cash to cover any checks that are uncleared, and also any fees on your bank that already incurred that you don't necessarily have the idea, or you haven't recorded on your end yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. So we have a shareholder loan account. Can you just explain what a shareholder loan account is?
Yeah, so if you're incorporated, we normally have an account called a shareholder loan account. So basically what it is any transactions that you either owe your company or your company owes you. So a normal shareholder loan account would normally be a credit where you your company owes you money. So these are the items that you've normally would have paid personally, but you didn't take any money from your corporation. So the other way around, where your shareholder loan is a debit balance or a negative balance, is when you actually owe money from your company because you've taken out too much, or you've made your company pay for personal transactions. Yeah.
Good. So what kind of receipts do I need to keep?
For series purposes, technically you have to keep all your receipts, but for record keeping purposes, normally we advise our client to keep anything over $100. When you receive an audit from a CRA, normally they would just look at the let's say the 3 or the 10 biggest transactions that you have in a certain account, and that's what they would look at. So if you have a lot of these small transactions that you don't necessarily need, keep as much as you can, but you don't necessarily have to keep them. Yeah, if it'll cost less to not keep them. Yeah, unless your business is doing a lot of small transactions that are very abundant in nature, and you don't necessarily have a lot of big transactions in there.
So does my bookkeeper need to know, does my bookkeeper have to have a basic knowledge of taxes?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you're, first of all, if your bookkeeper is doing the payroll for you, they kind of have to know what are the taxes that they have to withhold. And that's, normally you would have supplementary resources that would be able to calculate this for you. But your bookkeeper needs to know at least when to remit this stuff, especially for withholding taxes. Most of us are required to remit our withholding taxes every month, or we have a deadline, the 15th of the next month, to remit this withholding taxes. And same with GST. They should be able to know which supplies need to have GST charge on them, and which services we should be charging GST for, and again, when to remit these GST charges.
Yeah. I think also knowing when you're looking at your bank statement, if like a refund has come back from the government, you know, like your bookkeeper should know whether it's a GST or for your corporate taxes or for personal taxes, whatever it might be, so that it can get put into the correct GL account as well.
Yeah.
So not just the taxes going out, but if taxes are coming in for a refund. So what are some of the administrative jobs your bookkeeper needs to do?
Your bookkeeper needs to at least provide you assistance on organizing your receipts, organizing your expenses, and make sure that they're sorted by dates, and also that your invoices are filed properly. Yeah, so mostly filing of the transactions that you have, and also filing requirements with the government for tax purposes.
What support can your bookkeeper provide during an audit?
So your bookkeeper is usually the one that records most of the transactions, so they should be able to know the nature of these transactions and provide support on where the supporting documents are, since they are the one who record the transactions for you.
Good. Yeah, and just we've talked on lots of our videos, we've talked about being organized, and you as a business owner need to be organized, but your bookkeeper needs to be organized too, in case the CRA does send you out an audit, because like we've talked about, they give you 30 days to reply, and they're looking for very specific information. If you have a good bookkeeper, your bookkeeper is going to be able to give you the information that you need to reply to the CRA without any problems. So lastly, Yahweh, does your bookkeeper and your accountant need to communicate with each other?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I missed something about the shareholder loan account. A lot of bookkeepers, very common practice that anything that they don't know, or anything that they don't have receipt for, they would dump it into the shareholder loan account just because they think it's personal. You don't have the receipt for it, we can't claim it. Right. So a lot of the stuff that happens at the end of the year is you have this big shareholder loan balance that really are transactions that your account or your bookkeeper doesn't know what to do. So it's very important to for the bookkeeper to communicate with your accountant to know some of the accounting treatment, especially for big item purchase. If you bought a car, like, would you be able to capitalize this item? Any additional services done on the car, would you be do you need to capitalize it, or do you need to expense it during the year? And most of the time your accountant would know just by looking at your ledger at the end of the year. But if you are doing a lot of the transactions on a regular basis, I think it is very important for your bookkeeper to be communicating with your accountant, just so not everything is put at the end of the year where the accountant will do all this work just to classify all these information, and instead of actually focusing on making the reports better and giving you more or a better analysis on these reports. So I think it is very important that your bookkeeper at least needs to communicate with your accountant on let's say semi-annually at least, if you're a small business owner.
Yeah, great. I think that's all the questions that I have, Yahweh.
Yeah, so I hope you like this video and you find it informative. If you have any feedback or if you have any questions, please give us a shout. Just do comment below, or click like and subscribe for more information about bookkeeping. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time.